If you have been here for a minute, you probably know that I am originally an Arizona girl. I do like to kind of throw that into some of my videos and talk about that a little bit here and there. I was born and raised there, and I did leave for college, left the state, and after college moved back to Washington, D.C. for a hot minute before finally moving back to Arizona and the Valley of the Sun. It's where my family and I lived for 11 years before ultimately making that hard decision to move halfway across the country to somewhere we had never been before and start over. But here we are. We have now been here 12 years and we are still loving and living in the Dallas, Texas area. Okay, so over the years, I have realized that there are a lot of things that are similar between both Phoenix and Dallas, but definitely some things that are different. So maybe you are considering making that move here to the Dallas metro for work or for family, or maybe just a change of pace for some other reason. So I did want to highlight some of the similarities and the differences between the two major cities so that if you are considering making that decision, you will be a little bit more prepared. I actually am kind of surprised I haven't done one of these videos before, but here we are. So first up, my name is Kristen Carpentier, and I'm a local real estate agent here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, helping people find that perfect place to call home. I talk about the different cities and areas and the different communities to live in here in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. But in today's video, I do want to compare Dallas and Phoenix because surprisingly, over the last couple of weeks, I have had 4 different families reach out to me considering talking about making that move here to the Dallas area. So if you are just starting to do your own research and you have any questions at all, reach out, give me a call, shoot me a text or an email. Let's make a plan to see how I can help you make that move here to the Dallas, Texas area. And if you are new here to my channel, you've never seen me before, you should definitely subscribe because I am dropping content every single week, putting out new videos about what it's like living here, and I'm sure you probably won't want to miss it. And if you do want to help me out even more, don't forget to like this video. And of course, as always, please leave your comments and your questions down below as well. All right, so let's get started. And first up, I do want to compare some of the demographics between the two major cities. So first up, let's talk about size. Not that size really matters a whole lot, right? But Dallas, the city itself, is about 385 square miles. But the DFW Metroplex as a whole is the most populated metro area in the state of Texas and the southern United States. It is also larger than the states of New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island combined, covering 9,286 square miles currently. And Dallas is still expanding since we don't have any of those things called mountains anywhere around us. Now, the city of Phoenix, on the other hand, has an area of over 500 square miles, making it now the 5th largest city in the US, but the entire Phoenix metro is now sitting at well over 14,500 square miles. I actually hadn't realized just how big the Phoenix metro now was until I kind of started doing some of this research. Because back in the day when I was growing up, there was barely anything out west in areas like Buckeye or out in the Southeast Valley to areas like Santan Valley. I remember when that whole area was just barely starting to grow. So really kind of watching all of these areas explode is just completely crazy to me. We used to drive on 2-lane roads through cotton fields when I was younger and growing up. So still, even when I do go home to visit now, it always seems so much different to me. So even though the sizes are a little bit different, let's take a look at the populations of both major metro areas. Now, this is where we do kind of see a much bigger difference between the two. Now, the city of Phoenix sits at around 1.68 million residents, while the city of Dallas is only at about 1.29 million. Now, the DFW metro is sitting at around 8.1 million residents, with the growth that the area did experience back in 2023. It had the largest population growth of any metropolitan area in the entire country back in 2023. Now, the Phoenix Metro, which does include both Maricopa and Pinal counties, is at around 4.7 million residents. So, I mean, you're looking at really close to almost half the size of the Dallas Metro. Now, another big question that I do get asked about between Phoenix and Dallas is, of course, the weather. Because it's currently summertime here in Dallas and it is absolutely hot. And I feel like I may as well be living back in Arizona the way that we are all feeling right about now. People do want to know how humid it is really. Is it cooler than Arizona? Because when you look at the numbers and it might only be like 98 degrees, but Arizona's about 115. Well, in Arizona, they call that a dry heat. Here in Texas, we got the humidity. So where Phoenix calls it dry, I'm more of like dry, blazing, roasting, scorching. It's so hot. And that is, of course, my opinion. And Phoenix is also said to get about 111 days on average per year at or above 100 degrees. And when I looked back at 2023, they had 133 days of 100 plus degree temperatures. Now you compare that to Dallas Fort Worth, that only gets on average around 17 days above 100 degrees. Well, that's usually because I looked at those numbers because the last 2 years, it has been so hot here in Texas. And I'm like, okay, was it really only 17 days of 100 degree weather? No. Back in 2022, we had 47 days. And in 2023, we had 55. So I'm not loving those averages like at all. So it is no wonder that over the last couple of years, we were absolutely dying. And granted, still, it wasn't 133 days. And now here we are in 2024. And who knows what that's going to be. Because this year we ended up having the craziest, what we'll call hurricane spring rainy season, which was just completely bananas. And then now we have turned into drought season. So let's all hope that we don't break any more records this year. All right, so another thing about Arizona, if your favorite color is brown, Arizona might actually be the best place for you because most of the houses are made up of some varying shade of tan stucco. And in the areas with vacant land, it's pretty much mainly dirt that combines with a few tumbleweeds blowing through town. And here in Texas, you're going to find that our homes have a lot more variety and are mainly made up of brick. So I kind of think that that's kind of beautiful, especially depending on the neighborhoods that you're going into. And in some of the older homes and some of these more established areas, you're going to actually see these homes are going to look a lot more traditional and have those traditional looks about them. So some of the newer high-end homes, though, in a lot of the new construction neighborhoods that we are seeing, you are actually starting to see some of them be built and have those stucco exteriors, which is really not super common here in Texas, but you are seeing them more in new construction and, like I said, in higher price point homes. But don't you worry, we still have lots of brick and they're even starting to paint a lot of it. And you're seeing different colors of brick based on, the style and the colors that you used to see back in some of these older, more established neighborhoods. Okay, now let's get into a little bit more about housing, because if you are considering making that move here to Dallas, you're obviously wondering about what it's going to cost to buy a home here. Now, according to Realtor.com, the average price of homes that were sold in Dallas is at around $435,000, and Arizona is looking to be around $490,000. So it does show a lot more affordable opportunities to buy a home here in the Dallas metro area. Of course, we do have plenty of areas for any budget, from starter homes to very high-end luxury homes. You really can find them all based on the areas here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we do also have lots of new construction opportunities, and those are honestly all around the Metroplex. From north, south, east, and west, you can find lots of opportunities. Just honestly, it's more about which location you're going. More in North Texas and Prosper and Salina, the prices are going to be certainly higher than you're going to find down in some of the cities that are down south of Dallas. So another thing to kind of think about. Now, as we are thinking about moving here and maybe you're going to work here, purchase a home here, let's talk a little bit about our taxes between the two different cities. Now, the property taxes in Arizona, because this is always a big one, are sitting at around 0.63% of the home's value. But here in Texas, a lot of these areas are averaging around 2%. And if you're in new construction in growing areas, you're going to have additional taxes on top of those. So 2% versus 0.63, for example, that's more than double. So here in Texas, you can file a homestead exemption and get a slight discount on your property taxes. And in Arizona, when you purchase your home, that is automatically already put in there as well for you. So you are saving money in Arizona, certainly a lot of money on your property taxes. But the Arizona income tax, that's kind of where we differ a lot as well. And the income tax in Arizona is 2.5%, but guess what it is in Texas? It's 0. So that's why a lot of people are looking to move here, because they are saving all of that money on their state income tax by living and working in the state of Texas. Now, what about sales tax? So in Arizona, the sales tax is about 5.6%. And in Texas, it's at about 6.25%. So not a huge discrepancy on that based on what you might be shopping for. So that might be kind of a wash, I think, for a lot of people. But maybe your minimum wage. Maybe you have a teenager who's going out to get their first job because they turned 16 and they're in high school. Huge difference. So in the state of Texas, our minimum wage is sitting at $7.25. Ouch. But in Arizona, the minimum wage is now up to $14.35. Holy cow, I remember back when I had my first job, I think I might have made $5 an hour. So when you think of these 16-year-olds getting their first job, minimum wage is over $14. Holy cow, it's like they're rich. So lucky them. Anyway, but the cost of living. So if you are moving, obviously you might be a little bit more concerned about what the cost of living is. Now, these numbers are all averages, and obviously, depending on the different cities, some cities are going to certainly be more expensive to live in than some others. And when you compare things like utilities, food, and healthcare, then you have transportation and your goods and services. So this is where all of the cost of living is going to come into play. The Phoenix metro area, the cost of living is 6% higher than the national average, and the housing is 18% higher than the national average. Well, here in Dallas, our cost of living is 7% lower than the national average, and our housing is 17% lower than the national average as well. So where Arizona is higher in both categories, the Dallas, Texas area is lower. So quite surprising in that. I think it's because of the amount of affordable options that you can find for housing in some of the different areas that we do have here in the Dallas metro area. And another big one is gas, because if you have your car, you live in a big area, you drive for work, and maybe you have kids, you're driving around all the time, taking them to sports and activities. Well, the cost of gas in Arizona is surprisingly down to $3.54 per gallon. That's on an average. And the Texas gas is down to $3.09. So Texas has been hovering around $3 for quite a while. But when we moved here 12 years ago, the cost between the two different cities was pretty comparable. And then Arizona did shoot way up. And I think last year when I looked at numbers, it was over $4 a gallon. So it has come down there in the Phoenix area. But Dallas is still winning, and our gas is cheaper than the Phoenix area. So really, depending on how much you drive, and unless you do have an electric vehicle, for example, that's just going to be another thing that makes Arizona a more expensive place to live. Plus, with all of the people in Texas that do feel it is a necessity to drive those big trucks, it's obviously a good thing our gas is cheaper here. All right, so driving around, when you're speaking of how to get around town and what it's like driving all throughout these different metro areas, the one thing that I will always remember that was so hard for me to learn when I moved to different states and different areas for college and when I moved back east is that Arizona is built on a grid system. I knew growing up that every main road I went to, you went north a mile and everything was a mile apart. You started at baseline and baseline ran east and west and it was called the baseline. My dad always knew the numbers and we talked about how the next main road was a mile, the next main road was a mile. So when you kind of calculated how far everything was, you knew exactly how many miles away it was. And my dad could actually tell you the street numbers based on everything off of baseline and where everything was. So I was always shocked by that, still never learned that, but Arizona is built just on this fantastic grid system that honestly was so easy to learn growing up. And in Arizona, the main freeway was the 10 freeway. So that stretched out west and that went all the way out to LA. And then it went south down to Tucson and headed east into the state of Texas. Then we had the 17 freeway and that headed up north. And we had the 60 freeway that headed out east. And they also have the 101 loop. That really honestly isn't a perfect loop, but most of a loop that they had for the 101 freeway. But that did hook up with other parts of other freeways. And now they have the 202 loop that I do remember being built. It was brand new when we actually lived there. And that took you out to the Southeast Valley to Gilbert. And then it took you up to Mesa and looped up and around to Phoenix. Plus, they do have part of the 303 loop that they built. And that is out on the west side though. So that's going to link you up from Surprise and take you up to the 17 and down to the 10. But honestly, that's really all you have in Arizona for your freeway system and where you need to go to get around. But then we have the Dallas metro area. Here is a whole lot of freeways, from loops around town to freeways linking up Dallas and Fort Worth, and a whole spider web of freeways shooting off in every direction. But in addition to the freeways that we also have a number of toll roads here in Dallas. And those can get fairly expensive. Depending on where you live, it could cost you a whole lot to travel on those toll roads every single day, especially if that is the only road and only option besides maybe using those side roads all the way through town to get to work, because you would most likely not be using the regular city streets on an everyday basis for commuting, because it could take you hours to get from somewhere up like Frisco all the way down into Dallas if you took side roads the whole way. And with the amount of growth that Dallas is experiencing, that is also bringing lots of construction, and you honestly really can't avoid it. There's always construction happening all throughout the Metroplex. I am on the freeway and the roads all the time, and depending on where it is that you're commuting, so much construction is happening, and I don't think it is ever going to go away. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about things to do. Now, we don't have the mountains here in Texas, but we do have a lot of trees and nature. We have lots of lakes with lots of trails, and the trails aren't even around the lakes. We have some amazing parks and nature areas, and there really are some beautiful trail systems. And most of the time they are shaded because of the number of trees that we have. And because of all of the trees, that will help to cool off. I mean, even if it really is in the blazing heat of summer. So hiking in the trees in summertime here in Texas is definitely way more doable than for those living in the Phoenix, Arizona location, because you really don't have any trees. You just have some spindly little stick things. But of course, when you are out hiking in the heat of the summer, even though it might say it's only 98 degrees, is to make sure that you have lots and lots of water with you when you do go out. So the heat is still going to be unbearable, but you're going to have a lot of areas that you can go hiking here in Texas and have lots of trees to go hiking through. And also here in Texas, we have places like Six Flags. If you love amusement parks, we have Hurricane Harbor, which is the Six Flags equivalent to a water park. Plus, if you don't even want something quite so big, we have multiple other varieties of water parks all throughout the DFW area. And in all of these cities, we have lots of great community pools and activity centers with a lot of times they have their own lazy rivers, they have their own water slides. Obviously, they're on a much smaller scale, but super convenient and super doable for so many of these communities all throughout the Metroplex. And maybe you have heard of the Texas State Fair. Well, it is the biggest state fair in the United States that does bring in almost 2.5 million visitors every year. From livestock shows to concerts to tons of amusement rides and arts and crafts, there is honestly, you could spend a couple of days at the Texas State Fair. So it really is a treat to go to every fall. So certainly something to think about even if you don't live here in the Dallas, Texas area. And of course we have rodeos. We have the Fort Worth Rodeo. We have the Mesquite Rodeo. We have rodeos up north, south, east, and west here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have the Stockyard Championship Rodeo. And if that's not enough rodeo, you could take a short drive down to maybe San Antonio or down over to Houston to one of theirs, because this is Texas, and what's more Texan than throwing on your hat and your boots and hitting up one of the rodeos. All right, let's talk sports teams. Of course, who can discount the popularity of the Dallas Cowboys versus the Phoenix Cardinals? I mean, we're living in Dallas. It is definitely considered cowboy country, and not just the kind that you see at the rodeos in the big hats and the cowboy boots. So whether you like it or not, it is everywhere. And I am not joking. We even have a Cowboys themed Raising Cane's now. So no matter where you go, you can find your Cowboys gear. You can even tour the Cowboys stadium. In fact, some of these schools even take their kids on field trips to go tour Cowboys stadium. And that's the big one in Arlington. But you can also go up to the Start in Frisco and tour Cowboys headquarters. But even better yet, if you really are a diehard Cowboys football fan, or maybe just a football fan in general, you can even watch the Dallas Cowboys practice for free at their training camps. So they have a lot of ways that they do get out and promote the Dallas Cowboys. And it really isn't just the Dallas Cowboys here. We do have the Dallas Mavericks, we have the Texas Rangers, we have FC Dallas, and we also have the Dallas Star hockey team. We also have minor league teams here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex as well. Now, I do know that Arizona also has the Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Diamondbacks, so they do get some sports opportunities that really aren't so sad compared to some of the other ones. But Dallas really is buzzing with sports all year long. So depending on maybe your level of sports obsession, that will definitely be entirely up to you, because all I know is that sports are no joke here in the state of Texas as a whole, and especially here in Dallas. Because we have high school sports, we have college sports, and everyone everywhere goes crazy on game days. Yes, they do even tailgate to high school football games. I have never seen somewhere so passionate about sports as I did when we first moved here to Texas. So when you do decide to move, make sure you pick a team, and don't forget to go completely 100% all in on your support of them. And as far as college recruiting goes, Texas does rank as the second largest state for college recruiting. And while we really are mainly known as a football state, many of the top basketball and baseball recruits also do come from the state of Texas. But I will give Arizona points, though, for its spring baseball training. It really is like everyone can't get enough. And it is so much fun to be able to go to, because nobody can beat spring season in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I absolutely love it. So catch a Major League spring training game out in the Phoenix area during its beautiful weather. Really, honestly, a lot of things can't be beat. And I'm not even a huge baseball fan. Don't tell my husband. Arizona also has 200 golf courses. Granted, those are all different kinds of varieties. The ones in the neighborhoods, the small ones, and the huge, large ones at the big, beautiful resorts. Texas does say to have around 100, but that's really only half of the number of golf courses. So if golf is your thing, obviously so many more opportunities in the Phoenix area compared to Dallas. But we did just get the PGA headquarters here in Frisco. So if golf is your thing, maybe eventually Texas could become your thing too. So with a never-ending supply of things to do, Dallas also has multiple lakes all throughout the Metroplex. So that means that there are going to be multiple places to go swimming, to maybe take your boat out, and besides, anywhere you live throughout the Metroplex, you could easily be to one of the lakes in probably 30 minutes. There are also multiple lakes here that have sandy beaches, so you can just pretend you're at the beach or the ocean for the day. And our lakes here are also warm water lakes because they aren't fed from any mountains, because we have no mountains around us. So by the time you do get to July here in the Dallas area, the lakes are actually quite warm, and they really do kind of feel like bath water. But if you love the lake, we still have water to cool off at least ever so slightly in the summertime. And plus, with so many lakes here all throughout the Metroplex that you can get to so easily, it really does make an easy day to be able to spend as little or as long as you want to out there just because of the convenience factor. Now let's compare our lakes here in Texas to the ones that you're going to find in Arizona, more specifically in the Phoenix area. Because growing up, that is another way that we would cool off in the summertime. My family would head up to the lake. Now it was about an hour away. We would go up in and around through the canyon on these little tiny 2-lane roads that were totally creeped me out when I was younger. And when we got up there, the air might have been hot, but the water was actually pretty cool and super refreshing. We absolutely loved it because we were always dying of the heat up there. So it was an all-day thing for us though. Because it took us so long to get up there, we did it every weekend. And my grandparents would pack these big, large coolers filled with Shasta soda. Do most of you even know what Shasta soda is? And we would get tons and tons of snacks, and we would spend the entire day out there with our family and our friends. And we grew up, my parents and my grandparents always said we were the first ones in and the last ones out. And it was an absolute blast. We did it every single weekend growing up. All right, let's get back on track here a little bit from memory lane and talk a little bit more about the employment between the two separate areas. Now, DFW has a much more diverse employment base here. We do have everything from technology and finance, from healthcare and logistics. There are also large aerospace companies like Bell and Lockheed that are based over in the Fort Worth area. Education is also really big here as well. The Metro here is home to 5 different university campuses. We have TCU, SMU, UNT, TWU, and UT Arlington and Dallas. Healthcare is also a really big thing here. Not to mention, we also have American Airlines and Southwest Airlines that are both based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's also a major hub for UPS and FedEx. So speaking of logistics, with our big major hub of the DFW airport, that's obviously why that's a really big thing here as well. But when you compare that to the Phoenix metro area, the top 25 employers that are in the Phoenix area are actually part of the public sector, from schools to Maricopa County Department of Justice and the Public Works, for example. So that's a huge difference when those are their top 25 employers. Also, when you're looking at DFW, major companies are still relocating a lot of their headquarters here to the Dallas metro area, and which is another reason why we are seeing such a large influx of relocation clients that are moving here to Dallas. All right, let's talk a little bit about travel. Obviously, the Dallas metro area is centered right here in the middle of the country, and we do have 2 major airports. The DFW airport specifically is the 3rd busiest airport in the world, and it has 5 terminals with 174 gates, and it does serve over 80 million passengers just in the last year alone. And we also have a lot of international flights. Phoenix, on the other hand, is not nearly as big as the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but just saying, Dallas, much bigger travel-wise compared to the Phoenix airport. Now, when we're thinking about location, Dallas being in the center of the country, well, my personal favorite is kind of talking about the location to the beach. Now, my personal opinion, like I said, is that Arizona does kind of win because of its proximity to the Southern California beaches. Because in about 6 hours, you can be sitting on the sand and enjoying the 70-degree weather when it's July and August and 115 or 120 degrees. Within 6 hours, you can be sitting on the beach in California. My personal favorite, that is what we did my entire life growing up. But here in Texas, you can also be down to the Texas Gulf in maybe 4.5 hours. So it's certainly closer to get to the ocean, but the water is murky. It's kind of warm. They really don't have any waves. So really no need to bring your boogie boards down to the Gulf of Mexico down in South Texas. But sometimes you do just need to get out of town and maybe enjoy some beach time. I do love beach time. And South Texas is certainly an easy drive to make. And you can leave early in the morning and be sitting on the sand by lunchtime. But most of the people that we do know here in Dallas, when they take their big vacations, they like to make their trek all the way to the white sandy beaches of Florida, or maybe even like the outskirts of Alabama. So while I did spend the majority of my life enjoying cooler California summers, if you are looking for the crystal blue water, you're looking for warm ocean breezes without having to maybe fly to the Caribbean, Destin and the 30A areas of northern Florida, have a lot of amazing, great beach towns over there. And that's where it really is at for all the people that live here in the Dallas area. Everybody's going to wear sweatshirts and t-shirts because that's where everybody is going to be spending their vacations. I personally do feel like it's pretty hot there in the summer, but the cute beach towns are super great and definitely something that a lot of people can drive to if they want to. And it might be a long car ride, but of course, a quick plane ride can get you there as well. But another thing that we don't have here in Texas or anywhere close to in Dallas are the mountains. And I tell you what, when you have been dealing with the heat and the humidity for weeks, all you want to do is maybe enjoy some cooler weather. But there really isn't anywhere close by in Dallas to be able to go cool off for a day or two. But you can in the Phoenix area. Granted, it is a couple of hours away, but at least it's doable to be able to get up to the mountains and the pine trees and enjoy the cooler weather for a couple of days. So much easier to do when you're living in Phoenix versus living in Dallas. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about something that Arizonans are very familiar with and Texans might not really be as familiar with, and that's our retiree population. Well, in Arizona, we call them snowbirds. And in the wintertime, there are so many people that flock to the drier temperatures of the Phoenix Valley because there are a lot of people that may not want to live in Florida where it's super hot all year long. Well, the other mass congregation of snowbirds do reside in the Phoenix area. And the Phoenix dry heat is really what draws them in instead of the heat and humidity of Florida. Now, the largest 55 plus community is actually found in Sun City, which is the oldest active adult community in the United States and home to over 27,000 homes near the actual city of Phoenix. It has a population of around 40,000 people and is the second largest retirement community in the country. Obviously, number one is in Florida, but there are so many other retirement communities in the Phoenix area as well. I mean, you could pull up a list and depending on what you're in the mood for, there are tons of them. Here in Texas, we do have some retirement communities, of course, but nothing like you're going to find in Arizona. In fact, some of these master plan communities are building 55 and plus older sections within the master plan community, but most of them, other than a couple that I can kind of think about here off the top of my head, but most of them really aren't their own little thing, except areas maybe like Robeson Ranch up in the North Texas area. But in Arizona, you find a lot of them. And that's strictly what it is 55 and older communities. And like I said, some of them 27,000 residents. So they're quite huge. All right, so let's talk about the pollution differences. Yes, there actually is quite a bit of difference between Phoenix and Dallas and their pollution. Now, you're going to find a lot less pollution in the Dallas metro area. So, of course, there are a lot of people that don't like the fact that Dallas is so flat, but that actually is helpful in the pollution. In Phoenix, they have the Superstition Mountain Range, which is out in the East Valley, and that is what helps to shelter the city of Phoenix and the metro area from the wind. So that's why in the summertime, you get that really hot, stale air, and you just don't feel the breeze that blows through town. Well, here in Dallas, we have no mountains, so that's why we feel the breeze. And because of the breeze here, that's what helps to push a lot of the pollution out. So when you are out on the east side, maybe up in the mountains of the Superstitions, you can go hiking. There's a lot of things that you can do out there, and you can go and overlook the Phoenix Valley, and you can honestly see this layer of haze that just kind of sticks there in the Phoenix metro area. So certainly a huge difference in the pollution. But I will say that because Arizona is essentially the desert, honestly, it has a lot of cactus. And honestly, they're not really only in the mountains and out in the actual desert, but people do put them in their yards. They have cactus of all kinds, all varieties, and most of the people's yards are also landscaped with some form of rock. Because here in Texas, where you really don't see a lot of that, here our yards are mostly grass, plants, lots and lots of trees. But in Arizona, it really will produce a lot of these amazing sunsets. And it's because of the smog and the pollution and the dirt. And hence why those sunsets really are so beautiful in the Phoenix area. And even though I've seen some really great ones here in Texas, I will forever say that my favorite sunsets have always been when I was living in Phoenix. And another thing I love to talk about is food. I could eat food all day long. I love good food. I do not like bad food. And this could be kind of a toss-up for me though, because I lived in Arizona for so long. I grew up in Arizona. I was super picky growing up, but then my palate changed and there were so many great things that I absolutely loved. I have tons of great memories of all of my favorite restaurants that we would always go to in Arizona. The Mexican food in particular was always my favorite, and it was definitely different than what you are going to find here in Dallas. But here in Texas, there's so many different kinds and varieties and so many more options for food opportunities by living here in Dallas. So if you are a foodie, Dallas is definitely a great area. Granted, we have tons and tons of barbecue, and our Texas, we'll call it Mexican food, is certainly different, but honestly, there's a lot of really good ones. If you just have to learn to like and adapt, and it might not be what you're used to, but there really are some great ones. But really, we do love so many different kinds of ethnic varieties of food, and we have been to so many different restaurants. There's some great ethnic grocery stores and places to go shopping here, and we absolutely love it. So everything from Indian food to Cuban food to Cajun food and Korean food, so many different great areas. And especially when you get to know some people who've moved here and they find their perfect restaurant that they absolutely love, we love being able to try those. And we've had so many different kinds that we've loved by living here in Dallas. Nothing like I had when I lived in Phoenix. I'm sure they're there, but just not like what I have experienced since moving here to the Dallas, Texas area. But honestly, one of the things that I do miss the most about living in Arizona are the citrus trees. Now, our first house had this huge ruby red grapefruit tree that my kids absolutely loved. I honestly could not cut enough of them. Then in our next house, we planted lemons and oranges and limes and grapefruit. And the fruit that you grow in Arizona in your own yard is massive. We had lemons that were the size of our hands. And here in Texas, when you go to buy a lemon from the grocery store, they're these puny little things that are honestly just sad to me. So if you need to know a way to my heart, I love all things lemon. Just saying. Okay, so now maybe you need a little bit of a break. Maybe you need some sort of a staycation. You need somewhere to escape to, but you don't really have multiple days to be gone, and you want something fun to do that's pretty easy to get to. Well, in Arizona, there are a lot of amazing resorts that you can go and visit. Holy Hannah, there are some beautiful resorts there, especially when you can get a look at the beautiful red rocks and the beautiful mountains that are all around them. And this, I will say, has beat out the Dallas area. There are, I think, I read now, maybe 15 of some of the most amazing top tier resorts just in the Phoenix area alone. I know so many of my friends that actually live in other areas that like to visit the resorts in Arizona for vacation, plus all of our friends and family that do live in the Phoenix area who will maybe have friends or family come into town and they'll take a staycation and go out and hang out in one of these amazing resorts, because there really is something in a lot of these areas for everybody. Everybody from the kids to the parents to the dads. From the Arizona Biltmore in Phoenix and the Phoenician in Scottsdale, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, that is honestly just the tip of the iceberg of opportunities. But some of these places are also where the rich and famous like to go for vacation as well. You can go get your spa treatments and spend the day by their amazing resort pools or lounge in the lazy rivers, maybe go out and play a game of golf. So honestly, there really is something that everybody can do at these beautiful resorts that they have in Arizona. But here in Dallas, we really honestly do have multiple places that you can go. We have places like Great Wolf Lodge. We have the Gaylord Resort that is out on Lake Grapevine. But do most people really think of those as luxury? They both have water parks and pools and spas. Well, maybe that's what you love, because maybe you just want to have a fun staycation, take your kids to that is, right down the street here in Dallas, and you don't have to leave and go very far from home. Well, we also do have some amazing hotels. There's a Ritz-Carlton in Las Colinas. We have beautiful high-end hotels in downtown Dallas, and even some great boutique hotels over in the Fort Worth area. And not to mention, because the PGA headquarters has now come into the Frisco area, they have built a beautiful Omni Hotel that's right there on the golf course. It really does have a beautiful view. Just, it's a little bit different, I guess. The pool's nice. It's not phenomenal, my opinion. But up there with the golf course, there's something for dad to do. And there's certainly a lot of things around that area for everybody to enjoy. And the New Fields development in Frisco has announced that it's going to be building 3 5-star hotels there as well. They've announced a 5-star hotel from Marriott, as well as a new Ritz-Carlton that's going to be coming that I might possibly compare to what Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Paradise Valley already has had for years. But are they going to have the same type of amenities? Will they have the same type of things that you can find at these resorts in Phoenix? But they really are building up that area in Frisco to honestly have it all and something for everybody. So one day we may actually get there, but we shall see. And also they're even building that Universal Studios up in the Frisco area right next to the fields as well. A lot is coming, so many opportunities. And yes, there's some amazing areas and things to do when living here in Dallas. Now, one more thing that I do want to touch on just a little bit is the wildlife between the 2 cities and states. Now, for Arizona, I will absolutely say that it is not my favorite place when it comes to wildlife. They have scorpions and they have rattlesnakes. My parents' house, we can take a blue light out and go scorpion hunting every single night and find a lot of them. And they freak me out because one time my young son got stung by a scorpion and that cost me $1,700. Just so you know, the Phoenix hospitals do have the anti-venom. Most people are not allergic to them. We just got lucky. So not my favorite thing when it comes to scorpions. Supposedly they say we have them here in Texas some places, but I have never seen them. So I'm just going to choose to believe that we don't have them. But here in Texas, we have a whole lot of other things that I have never seen in Arizona. We have lots and lots of squirrels. It's like they're everywhere. We have bunnies. Not to mention, we found one that built its nest right in the middle of my yard the other day. My husband wondered why the grass was dying. Come to find out, he dug a little hole and put his little babies in there. I have seen a coyote walking right down the street of my neighborhood. I have walked around the block from my house and seen a couple of deer in the middle of the park. And not to mention, one night I had ran to the grocery store and coming home, there was one that had gotten hit by a car in the middle of the main road. It must have been coming out from one of the treed nature areas along the side of the road, but a deer in the middle of the city. So unfortunately, he lost his life when he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And because of all the trees and the washes and the trails that we have all throughout a lot of these areas, a lot of this wildlife is able to hide in there. Unlike in Arizona where they have dirt and tumbleweeds and, like I said, those little skinny stick trees that they have that, thrive in the desert. If these animals lived there, you would be able to see them quite a bit easier. Here in Texas, we also have skunks. Sometimes in the spring, you can smell them based on where somebody might have hit them. We also have armadillos. Yes, lots of armadillos. In fact, a little armadillo must have walked through and started playing with the neighbor's dog. That one was kind of funny. Lots of people see bobcats in their trees or maybe walking along the golf course. And yes, here in Texas, we do have snakes. I wish I could say that we didn't, but this spring and all of our rain brought quite a few of them out into the most random places, and I was not a fan. Granted, most of them are known to be those harmless rat snakes, but people have talked about copperheads and water moccasins in some of the areas here in Texas as well. I just personally have never seen them, and when I haven't, I choose to pretend they don't exist. But it doesn't matter. I don't like any snakes of any shape or form. And bugs. Yes, here in Texas, we have lots of bugs. When you're driving out in the country at night, because yes, the country might not be too far away, you are sure to have the front of your car covered with bugs that have been splattered all over the front. We have mosquitoes, and right now, honestly, they are out of control. We have the flying June bugs. They're not so fun. Plus, the cicadas that are super, super loud, especially when they're dive bombing you in the head as you're trying to get in the house or you're walking outside. Absolutely yuck. I hate that like crazy, but they're totally harmless. So whatever it is that your preference might be, if you just can't stand that hot, dry desert heat any longer, reach out, let's chat. We have lived here now for 12 years, and there is a lot that I have learned along the way. And maybe let's help you find somewhere that you would love to live as well. Because frankly, we do still love it here. We've been here 12 years and we've raised our kids here, and we are happy to call the Dallas, Texas area home. So if this is the right fit for you, don't hesitate to reach out, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, and let's chat. And more importantly, until next time, take care.